UF's schedule was fully released last night, and I've got a few takes on it that may or may not surprise you. But I think the Gators got relatively good news on Wednesday night. We're going to talk about it all in just a minute. First of all, though, I want to talk about the way that they released the schedule. It was incredible. To include so many legends, there was Spurrier, there was Chris Collingsworth, Aaron Andrews, Tim Tebow, Thaddeus Bullard, Caleb Dressel, lots and lots of very famous Gators. Really one of the cooler schedule announcements that I think I've ever seen. I definitely had goosebumps watching it. It was fun. It made me excited for next football season. Very, very cool way to announce it. Now, on to the schedule. I have not seen official rankings, but I'm going to go out on a pretty solid limb here and say that UF has the toughest, at least on paper, schedule in 2024. But that's all it is right now. It's on paper schedule. That's it. So much is going to happen between now and then with recruits and transfers and injuries and coaching changes. So many factors at play here. And it's really, really hard to pinpoint what any of these teams will be next season. For example, will LSU and Florida State look good next season? We don't know. They're losing their quarterbacks and a lot of other key pieces to the NFL or graduation. FSU's got a few hit in the transfer portal. That makes it so hard to project. And honestly, it's even harder to project those two particular games because they happen so late in the season. So even when you're breaking in a new quarterback at the very beginning of the year, that team could look totally different by the time November rolls around. We just don't know what we're going to get. And that takes me to a thought about this schedule that I think a lot of people are overlooking. There are so many new quarterbacks that Florida's going to face. Miami, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky, LSU, FSU, and possibly Ole Miss and Texas if Dart and Ewers go to the NFL. So with so much uncertainty at the quarterback position for so many of these programs, that is already an advantage that UF has over them with Graham Mertz. And, what an ironic place for Florida to be sitting, right? All offseason, we heard about the fact that Florida didn't have a quarterback in Graham Mertz and that this was somebody that couldn't even play in the Big Ten and was unsuccessful at Wisconsin. And Florida just got what they could out of the transfer portal and they'd missed on all these other guys. And what in reality, what happened is Napier identified talent in the transfer portal, got Graham Mertz to Florida, and then really has pulled some great things out of him this past season. I don't know that there's anybody that 1 year ago would say that we'd be sitting here saying, hey, it's a huge strength for the University of Florida that Graham Mertz is coming back. Now, hopefully he puts together a season even better than last year, but quarterback is a position of strength for the University of Florida going into the 2024 season. And I don't think you could have said that last year. Now, looking at the 2024 schedule, I think that it's very similar to last year's, okay? It's a tough game to start. Florida starting at Miami. Last year, they started at Utah. That is a very tough out-of-conference game. Then a manageable, potentially, next 6 games, and then a brutal last 5 games to end it. When you look at Florida's last 5 games of the season, those are teams within the top 13 this year. Florida is playing 5 of this year's top 13 in November next season. So what does that mean? Well, let's start from the beginning. It's not news, but this Miami game is huge for so many reasons. First and foremost, pride. The University of Florida and the University of Miami have had a rivalry for many, many years. Both programs will go back and forth, tell you, why isn't it played every year? Who benefits, who doesn't, whatever else. But UF loves to beat Miami. Doesn't matter the sport. They want to beat the Hurricanes. There's a lot of pride on the line. This year, the University of Florida has the tall task of playing every major Power 5 program in the state of Florida. So therefore, there really could be a real state champion if Florida takes care of business. Starts with Miami. The second reason it's such a huge game is recruiting. How many recruits come from Miami-Dade and South Florida, right? That is where some of the top football talent is in the state, which then, of course, makes it some of the top in the nation. And UF wants a foothold in South Florida. They want to be able to pull recruits from there. They want to be able to take kids from Miami. This is a great way to do it. Show them you're the better team. You're the better program. You're the better option for their talent. And then this is huge for Billy Napier's future, possibly, right? If you come out and you lose week 1, it's not good. There's a lot of games that Florida's going to struggle with in 2024, at least on paper right now. It's going to be a really difficult November. So it's important for Billy Napier to stack some wins at the beginning of the season because it is going to be brutal towards the end. He's already lost some of the fan base, and a loss at home to the Canes would have donors and fans alike wondering if things will ever get turned around, if Billy Napier is the guy. Now, Napier isn't getting fired after the Miami game, no matter what happens. But I do wonder if he can come back from it if they lose. We'll have plenty of time to break that game down over the next 9 months, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it, but that's going to be a big one. Next up is Samford. That is a win, right? And then we get 2 teams with a brand new head coach. Texas A&M and Mississippi State will both be breaking in new guys. I like that Florida gets them at the beginning of the season as opposed to the end because they're going to take some time to gel. That's always what happens with new head coaches, and there's going to be a lot of new guys at both of those programs. They both had a lot of people hit the transfer portal. I'd rather play them before they get things figured out, right? So Texas A&M comes to the Swamp. That's a big, big game. And then they go to Starkville and play Mississippi State. Florida should win both of those games. Now, I do not doubt Elko will get the Aggies headed in the right direction, but I just, like I said, am not sure he can do it by week 3. And we're going to see, but I'm glad that game is in the Swamp. That's going to be a game that if it was played in November would be a lot tougher than getting played in September. And then Mississippi State, Florida is just better than Mississippi State. If you look at Jimmy's and Joe's, Florida's guys are better. This should be a win, period. Now, that's the same for UCF. I know that fans are worried about losing this game, and honestly, that's because UCF fans are some of the most insufferable on the planet. But if we can't beat UCF right now, we have a lot bigger problems, and I think that probably will be the end of Napier's tenure if he cannot beat UCF. I would be honestly pretty surprised if we lose that game. Then you have Tennessee and Kentucky before Georgia. Neither of those games will be easy. And I'd say if you split these two, that you're probably pretty happy, right? Kentucky's had Florida's number the last 3 years. That is one that I think a lot of people will have circled. But if you can pick up one of those two, that's pretty good. So what's that give you? Like a 5-2 or 4-3 record, worst case, through the first 7. I'd probably have my money on 5-2 or maybe even 6-1 at this point, honestly. I think 5-2 is probably the most likely. But then all hell breaks loose. We move into November, which is the hardest stretch of college football for 2024 on paper at this moment. You play Georgia in Jacksonville. That game is going to be incredibly tough, as it always is. Georgia doesn't rebuild, they reload, right? They're going to be returning a lot of talent. They're going to be pissed off that they didn't make the playoffs this past year. This is going to be a very tough game. Then you travel to Austin to take on the Texas Longhorns, a team that's playing in the playoffs this season. That's going to be another tough game. Really tough road environment, really good team. Then you get LSU at home. I really do think that LSU is trending in the right direction. They lost 3 games this season. I don't expect them to lose that many next season. And you get them at the end of the year where they're really, really hitting their stride, barring injury. It's going to be a tough game. Then Ole Miss comes to town. Lane Kiffin would like nothing more than to beat the Florida Gators. He loves jabbing at us and the fans and the program and whatever else. That's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a fun one, but it's going to be a tough game. And then you got to go to Tallahassee to play Florida State. And, we don't know what we're going to get out of the Seminoles next year. They are replacing a lot of talent that graduated or went to the NFL or even hit the transfer portal. So it'll be interesting to see what they look like. But again, this is another team like LSU. You're getting them by the end of the season. So without any injuries, they should be really gelling and hitting their stride at that point too. So will be interesting to see what they can do. But this, again, another top team in college football in 2023. So on paper, these 5, incredibly tough. But here's the big question. Can we learn from last year? Can we finish? UF was in some games late in the season, and they just couldn't figure out how to finish. They were a kick away from beating Arkansas, a 4th and 17 away from beating Missouri, and then maybe a double reverse trick play away from beating Florida State. I don't doubt that those last 5 games are going to be tough, but I also don't doubt that some of those games will be close. So can the Gators finish? Can we not make the same idiotic mistakes that cost us last year? If we are 5-2 before Georgia, and let's say most likely 5-3 coming out of Georgia, this team needs to find a way to win 2 or 3 of their last 4 games. It just is what it is, right? Third year for Billy Napier. It stinks that he happens to get the hardest schedule that we've probably ever played, but it is what it is, and he's going to have to perform. Texas on the road will be tough. LSU and Ole Miss at home, you've got to take care of the home field. You've got to figure out a way to get wins there, or at the very least, split them. And then FSU on the road with all the guys they lost. You have to beat your rivals. Something that will cost a head coach at the University of Florida well before your overall record is your record against your rivals. Florida has got to figure out a way to beat Florida State. Okay, so what games are you the most excited about? What games are you thinking about going to? I have got to go to that Texas game. Let's talk about it down in the comments. At the end of the day, I think the schedule, as difficult as it is, actually sets up okay for the Gators. But they've got to, 1, learn from last season, and 2, stop shooting themselves in the foot down the stretch. Come out the gate, win the games you're supposed to win. Go into Georgia 5-2 or better, 6-1. Figure out a way to stack those wins at the beginning of the year because the end is going to be tough. But don't make it harder on yourself. Win the games that you can. Don't make stupid mistakes. Napier needs to get 7 or 8 wins, in my opinion. Okay. I am not guaranteeing that they fire him if he goes 6-6 with the hardest schedule in college football, but that would put his overall record at 17-20 through his first 3 years. And I'm just not sure what the mood of the program would be then. But he's got this entire offseason to get them ready. And if he's the program builder that we were led to believe he is, then I'm excited to see the changes that allow him to do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to have another video for you real soon. Go Gators.